are these people?
I hate talking about presidents and what they're doing, and here's two of them. So, you know, Zionist Donathan and his cuckery this week. We're gonna go get into that. So we might as well jump right into it. So shout out to Hotspot, use them a bunch on this, but Donald Trump says he wants to expel all Palestinians from Gaza as Netanyahu smiles.
People you're thinking about?
All of them. I mean, we're talking about probably 1,000,007 people, 1,000,007, maybe 1,000,008. But I think all of them. I think they'll be resettled in areas where they can live a beautiful life and not be worried about dying every day.
So no mention of why they might be dying, being the guy right next to him. But you know, whatever. Yeah, so that's where we start, which is just, yeah, so we'll get into a bit more. I know Colin's going to go off at some point, and I'm just going to wait for the kettle to boil, you know. A reporter can be heard yelling, this is what I find funny. Now it's okay for reporters to actually
it's okay to say shit. Now it's okay. But when you had Biden, it was like, you can't say shit. You can't say shit.
Shut the fuck up.
Election. He's going to lose the election. You have to wait till he's elected again, and then you'll push him. Like that kind of bullshit we were hearing. Now it's okay.
Exactly. Thank you, MF Doom. But anyway, a reporter can be heard yelling, "But it's their home, sir," after being asked if Palestinians had the right to return.
Peter?
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding was happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't
really
want to
nice,
return.
really great.
Why would they want to return? The place has been hell.
Yeah.
One of the meanest
been so hell.
places on earth.
Meanest.
And right now,
toughest.
I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can...
Yes, why? Why can't they live there? What the fuck happened, sir?
Where was this resistance last year?
It was fucking at brunch. You know this. They were at brunch, dude.
If we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, and it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6
Egypt?
areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die, because Gaza is a guarantee that they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again. It's happened over and over.
He's doing the
again.
he's doing the thing. He's doing the look at that right there, you
there,
fucking
Peter.
Satanist watchers. Look at that Illuminati right there, you fucking
they wouldn't
mooks.
want to go back. Who would want to go back?
You doing it
They've experienced nothing but death and destruction.
at the hands of the guy right next to you with the comb over. The guy with the comb over sitting next to you is the cause. Well, one of, you know. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, which we'll get into in a bit. The actual plans that we've talked about for what, years now, right? So, meanwhile, Sam Husseini, right, comes in with the people's elbow. Many professing solidarity with Palestinians, including alleged legal experts being slaughtered in Gaza, have said they have nowhere to go. It's not true. They do. Somewhere they actually should go. Their homes in what is now Israel. The majority of families in Palestine and Gaza were forced there by Israel in 1948. As Professor John Quigley has noted, they are entitled to repatriation under international law, including the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, which Israel has signed and ratified. See his writing on the subject here and here. And of course, there's UN Resolution 194 of December 11th, 1948, which resolves that the refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return. The extremely pro-Israel Harry Truman would state the following year that if Israel continues to reject the basic principles set forth in that UN resolution, the U.S. government will regretfully be forced to the conclusion that a revision of its attitude toward Israel has become unavoidable. See below, read JFK. What happened to him? UN mediator Count Folke Bernadotte would report on September 18th, 1948, it would be an offense against the principles of elemental justice if these innocent victims of the conflict were denied the right to return to their homes while Jewish immigrants flow into Palestine, and indeed at least offer the threat of permanent replacement of the Arab refugees who have been rooted in the land for centuries. Actually, Bernadotte wouldn't report that because the Stern gang shot him 6 times the day before his report was issued. They shot his French assistant no less than 17 times. No one was ever brought to justice for killing the mediator. So, in case you're wondering what happened there, the prospect of Palestinians going back to their homes continues to bring out the most murderous impulses in Israeli officials. Antiwar.com reports Israeli Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir said on Sunday that Israeli forces should shoot Palestinian women and children in Gaza if they get too close to the border. We cannot have women and children getting close to the border. Anyone who gets near must get a bullet, Ben-Gvir said during an argument with IDF Forces Chief of Staff Lieutenant Gen Herzi Halevi about the IDF's open fire policies, according to the Jerusalem Post. So, good stuff from Husseini. But anyway, this is where it started yesterday, right? So Trump announces that the U.S. will take over the Strip.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under
caused by this guy
concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious.
Yeah, he blew up all the buildings.
Occupy all of a beautiful area with homes.
Beautiful area, very beautiful. People tell me.
Peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for
so many jobs.
People of the area. Do a real job.
So many jobs. We're going to do a real job. Very different job. People tell me it's going to be so good. God, I fucking hate his whole shtick, dude. He needs a new script writer or something, you know? But anyway, breaking. Trump, the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. We will own it. Level the site. The ceasefire negotiations only legalize the ethnic cleansing Israel's long been doing in the West Bank and Gaza. Greater Israel is here to stay, and this administration will ensure that. So, Miriam Adelson getting everything she wants. Any thoughts so far?
Shout out to TL Orca who said, I hate this timeline.
Yeah, me fucking too. So she's got a little more. According to the Wall Street Journal, before his election, Trump called the Gaza Strip prime real estate in a phone call with Netanyahu and asked him to think about what types of hotels could be built in the area. This isn't surprising because Donald J. Trump is a real estate mogul and billionaire, but in addition to that, he's also operating under the most radically Zionist administration in history. It's incredible that the majority of U.S. alternative mainstream media has favored engaging in the trendy cheerleading hopium of his takeover because Biden, instead of seeing it clearly for what it is, a controlled demolition and repurposing of the power into the hands of the overt politician owned by corporations and billionaire technocrats like Musk. His ceasefire negotiations and U.S. aid symbolic slashing are mere salad dressing when the main course is expanding Greater Israel into the region, expanding U.S. power, and consolidating empire tentacles from the CIA cutout U.S. aid to a more easily controlled power vacuum at home. So, if Trump can develop Gaza, West Bank, and all of Palestine, as I stated in my Substack article from 3 weeks ago, into luxury real estate for Israelis, he's truly keen to do it. That's his thing. And he already made guarantees to Bibi months ago before he is owned by Adelson. As I stated before, Trump's role in the administration is to act like he's cleaning up Biden's mess, i.e. rebuilding what Democrats destroyed in Gaza, but he's not doing it for their good. He's doing it for profit and benefit to the deep state. That is his role. This isn't change, but a continuation of the imperialist U.S. foreign policy at the core.
Capitalism.
As for his claims about Saudi Arabia, he's not lying because the Saudis have made their bed with the West long ago, and Palestine has long understood that they can't rely on them. The only people profiting from this will be Washington and Israel. Any questions?
No.
Cool.
No.
So, just a thought. Says 1 of 1,000 reasons why I didn't vote and why I will never, ever support the duopoly or these proxies that exist only to dominate, genocide, ethnically cleanse, and colonize the world. Stop supporting these psychopathic horror show excuses for human beings.
Oh,
Pretty
but
fair.
according to some liberals, that she's the reason why Trump won.
And I'll fucking do it again, too. Fuck.
None of the above.
Anyway, Donald Trump reasserts that the U.S. will take ownership of the Strip and suggests he may deploy troops to the region.
As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll do that. We're going to take over that piece. We're going to develop it, create thousands and thousands of jobs, and it'll be something that the entire Middle East can be very proud of.
Very proud of. Very good. Very goodly. Betterly. Hugely. In Lakesh on Trump, Gaza's invasion threat, as horrible as it would be, these are likely just empty words to help Netanyahu politically. The U.S. occupation of Gaza takes huge months, long preparations, and would cost hundreds of billions. Also, many thousands of soldiers would be killed or injured. I hate to tell you, in Lakesh, but I mean, I don't think they give a fuck.
No, they don't. And we've seen how much money has been going up. Well,
yeah, we can print it.
Maybe well, you know what? It could be to the advantage of us in a way, because it's just more of a continuation of money going out the door for Israel. And it's just, meanwhile, we continue to
straight to Raytheon, straight to right. Oh yeah, so they're happy with that. BlackRock's going to make a ton. So we'll be all right.
So
I think that's wishful thinking.
Right. If anything, it should work in the favor of really a true resistance. Yeah. But the problem is that, of course, people are going to be up in arms now that Trump is in power. But you should have been doing this all along. Like, you should have been doing this, honestly, prior to Biden.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
Really.
Prior to a lot of things.
Right.
But anyway, a little bit more.
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands.
I'm sure
it's
they
such
say
a
no.
Fucking dude, he's so memeable. Bullshit. Like, people tell me, the best people, they told me everybody loves it. Such a good idea. It's my idea. I made it. People told me it was great. Like, it's just such fucking predictable bullshit.
With something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and
why?
Demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight. I've studied this very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it from every different angle. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be. And it's only going to get worse And I think this is an idea that's gotten tremendous, and I'm talking about from the highest level of leadership, gotten tremendous praise. And if the United States can help to bring stability and peace in the Middle East, we'll do that.
Right. And how successful has the U.S. brought peace and stability to Libya?
We are the United States government. We don't do that sort of thing.
Rest in peace. So let's go back. Right, I have in the description, in that little doobly-doo, a couple of YouTube links. Go check them out. One's going to be this one right here, where me and Indy cover Israel Gaza's 2035 plan. Collin, you're probably wondering what all these pictures are here, right? These pictures, very, very interesting AI pictures. So from crisis to prosperity, this is, again, we read a Vanessa Beeley article talking about this Ynet article where they talk about the dystopian vision of Gaza's future, right? So we covered this a while ago. I'm sure Indy in the chat will tell me exactly when. But so this paragraph here, it is hard to imagine the Gaza Strip becoming the tiny and glittering country in East Asia, but it is the vision that Netanyahu is trying to advance behind the scenes. The idea, complete detachment from Israel and a connection to the world through a maritime corridor to Cyprus. What does that sound like, Care Bear? And a land crossing to Egypt. That is correct. Tens of billions of dollars to be spent on the restoration of destruction and tourism and high-tech ventures. Okay? And civilian rules based on international bodies. We know about that rule-based order. The buds can be seen on the beach where a pier for humanitarian aid was erected. Yeah, where's that at now? Where's that pier at? Anyone remember that fucking thing?
I mean, in the ocean.
Yeah, it's in that fucking drink. Davy Jones got that pier now. So the buds can be seen on the beach where a pier for humanitarian aid was erected, but it will take a lot of persuasion and execution efforts to make the dream a reality. So yeah, people saying my sound's a little weird. Let me just turn it down. Maybe that'll help. But so these photos were in that article, right? These are essentially like what they will make the Gaza Strip into, right? EV factories were one of the big parts of this, and other, like, it's a bread producing region. So but yeah, not great. So but any thoughts so far? No.
I'm none. I'm just tired. As I said at the beginning of this stream, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm just tired that people are now speaking up. We asked them to speak up years ago.
Yeah.
And they didn't. Or they pretended to, but then when push came to shove, to actually do the moral thing, which was nobody. You didn't need to vote for either one of these two fools. Like, there couldn't be an election really if there's no election if people don't participate. And I'm sure even with that, if no one voted, that I'm sure they would pull some shenanigans. But let that be known to them that you wouldn't stand for even one of these motherfuckers. So, but because Trump was going to be so much worse, Biden was the quote unquote better option. But this would have happened under Biden too. Let's not get it twisted. As I said, Trump is just a more overt in saying what he plans to do. The Democrats pretended like, oh, we cared about the Palestinians and all of that, but this was still on the books anyway. So, again, distinction without a difference.
Very much so. So, DeCamp over at antiwar.com, Trump is also saying the Palestinians must leave and can't go back. So that means under this plan, the U.S. would be building Jewish settlements in Gaza, which is
I'm
against
sure
international
law.
law.
National law.
So we talked about this. Do you remember this story, Care Bear?
Yes.
Israel's secret plan about pushing, like, if you look right at this little map right here of the strip and the arrow pointing this way, it's send them into Egypt, which is exactly what Trump just said, right? So this was, again, like a long time ago. Again, links in the description. You're welcome to go check it out. But yeah, I mean, this has been in the books for a while now. So, but I brought Malik Hijazi from the Electronic Intifada saying Gaza is not a thing, right? You heard him talk about it in the last couple of segments in an objectifying way. But they write, it seems that neither Israel nor the U.S. is willing to leave us, the people of Gaza, to exist in peace, even after the announcement of a fragile ceasefire in the genocidal war perpetrated by the Israeli colonial occupation, backed by American support and brokered with Egyptian and Qatari guarantees. U.S. President Donald Trump made yet another deeply contentious declaration he proposed to clean out that whole thing, suggesting the relocation of 1.5 million Palestinians to neighboring countries like Jordan and Egypt, framing it as so-called humanitarian solution. I read his words twice, trying to grasp the full weight of what he meant by thing. It was unmistakable. He was referring to Gaza itself, a land that is home to over 2 million people who have endured decades of siege, bombardment, and forced displacement. To Trump, Gaza is not a place of life, history, and resistance, but an obstacle to be erased. Its people reduced to a problem for the U.S. favorite spoiled child to solve. Describing a phone call with Jordan's King Abdullah II, Trump called Gaza a real mess and said that he urged King Abdullah to take in more Palestinians. He suggested the new arrangement could be temporary or long-term for the displaced, claiming it would allow them to, quote, live in peace for a change.
What do you mean by temporary, though? Like, what does that mean?
That
Like-
that they could go somewhere else, right? But he's mainly saying that, like, it might be temporary, but probably permanent. So Trump said, I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. He said, however, both Egypt and Jordan rejected the proposal to relocate Palestinians from Gaza. This isn't new. Trump views Gaza not as a homeland, but as a real estate problem to be solved. He recently called it a phenomenal location, yet, at the same time, likened it to a massive demolition site. His words echoed those of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who spoke last year of Gaza's valuable waterfront property as if it were prime land for redevelopment, once its people were conveniently erased. In Gaza, Trump's proposal was met with both defiance and deep concern. Some dismissed it outright, refusing to take his words seriously, especially after the Israeli military withdrew from most areas of the coastal territory, allowing residents to return to their devastated neighborhoods in northern Gaza. The general sentiment voiced in Gaza was that if they didn't leave during the bombardments when the pressure to abandon homes was at its peak, why would they leave now, after the killing has paused? Others, however, saw his statement as a warning that Gaza's reconstruction might be deliberately stalled, making it uninhabitable and forcing its residents to leave. Even without direct military action, another kind of war continues, one of deprivation. Severe restrictions on food, medicine, water, and fuel have made daily life a battle for survival. Hospitals struggle to function, families wait in endless lines for clean water, and frequent power cuts plunge entire neighborhoods into darkness. If these conditions persist, staying in Gaza may become an unbearable choice. Parents will face the excruciating decision of watching their children suffer from hunger and illness or leaving behind their homeland. Humanitarian aid, already a lifeline for survival, could be weaponized, conditions in ways that push for relocation under the guise of necessity, what bombs failed to achieve, creeping desperation might. So, Yeah, although Egypt and Jordan have so far resisted such proposals, diplomatic efforts could lead to pressure on them to accept Palestinian refugees as part of an international peace settlement. And on top of that, there's economic pressures with Egypt, especially, and Jordan,
Right.
both of them. So, that's part of this as well. And especially if Qatar and the UAE and all those things also put their pressure on them. So, which is possible. But on the 11th of October, 2023, when U.S. official John Kirby spoke of safe passage for Gazans to flee, my father, sitting in our living room, turned off the radio in disgust. His face darkened, and he waved his hand dismissively. "We will not leave," he said firmly, as if addressing Kirby himself or the forces behind the relentless cycles of displacement that have haunted our people for generations. My father often spoke of his grandfather's exile in 1948, the lands lost, the painful separation from his father after the 1967 war, when my grandfather left to work in Egypt. He was never allowed to return. These were not isolated stories, but part of a long history of displacement, of families torn apart, of promises broken. He told me of the 1970s, the expulsion of families from Jabalia refugee camp when the Israeli military marked the homes of freedom fighters with an X, giving them just 48 hours to leave before their houses were destroyed. Other homes were demolished under the pretext of widening roads, another tactic of forced displacement. One of these families was the Daouds, my father's neighbors, who came to say goodbye before being forced to Al Arish in Egypt, uncertain if they would ever return. This strategy of expelling Palestinians from Gaza is not new. In 1953, a plan negotiated between Egypt and UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, aimed to relocate 60,000 refugees from Gaza to Sinai, backed by $30 million in UNRWA funding. By 1955, as Israeli military raids escalated, the plan gained momentum, but mass protests forced its cancellation. In 1956 to 57, Israeli Finance Minister Levi Eshkol allocated $500,000 to finance the departure of 200 Palestinian refugees from Gaza. By 1969, Israeli officials were considering measures to lower Gaza's standard of living vis-a-vis the West Bank in order to encourage outmigration. Under Ariel Sharon's military command in 71, Israel destroyed thousands of homes, deported 12,000 civilians to Sinai, many of whom were placed in the Canada camp near the Egyptian border, where they lived in limbo for years. These policies were part of a broader strategy to fragment Palestinian society, reduce the refugee population, and eliminate their political identity, continuing the long history of displacement in Gaza. So, we've talked about this specifically. We've talked about pushing to the Egyptian border and then what their plans after they push Palestinians to that border, which I think is more a problem, because I doubt those people will just go, hands tied. So then they get to
Mm-hmm.
blame Egypt for that. So keep in mind, settlers want from where to where, right? From the Nile to the Euphrates. Well, you're going to need parts of Egypt for that. So,
Right.
This has been part of the plan for a long while, far before Biden and Trump were ever even a thing. So, such policies have long shaped Palestinian awareness, reinforcing a collective understanding that displacement is not incidental, but deliberate. This is why so many in northern Gaza refused to move south during the recent war, recognizing the latest so-called evacuation orders as part of a familiar strategy of forced transfer. They knew this wasn't just about escaping bombardment, it was about resisting erasure. Similarly, in the South, despite relentless pressure and violence, many chose to remain rather than risk becoming part of another wave of forced exile. They never once considered crossing the border into Egypt. Resistance in Gaza has never been just an individual act, it is a collective stand against a history that demands repetition. Western colonial powers have long viewed Gaza and Palestinians more broadly not as people with history, culture, and agency, but as a population to be controlled, discarded, or managed. To them, we are human animals, marginalized and expendable. To be displaced, starved, and erased without consequence, Trump's words, reducing Gaza to a thing to clean out, are not an anomaly, but a clear reflection of this dehumanizing mindset. Yet history proves them wrong. Gaza is not an object of policy or a mere crisis zone. It is alive with flesh and blood. A land of resistance that has defied every attempt to erase it. Those labeled as refugees have dismantled even the most sophisticated colonial strategies. The people deemed powerless have continually disrupted the occupiers' best laid plans. We have endured What we have endured is not just another war or humanitarian catastrophe, it is a systematic effort to break and erase us. And despite everything, they failed. Our losses are immeasurable. Great people, entire families, homes, streets, and histories etched into the walls of our cities. Dreams and futures have been stolen. But when we saw people return to their destroyed homes on the 27th of January, 2025, stepping over ruins and sifting through the wreckage, it proved that our bond with this land is unbreakable. As Gaza has thwarted previous plans of forced transfer, it will thwart the current one as well. A place home to mostly Palestinian refugees expelled in 1948 will forever haunt Israel as a curse, and just as Palestinians in Gaza have returned to their northern ruins, one day they will return to their original hometowns. The Great Return March speaks to a deeper truth that even the most powerful armies must now confront. Against advanced weaponry, AI-driven warfare, missiles, and an arsenal designed to crush them, the so-called poorest and most marginalized have stood their ground. Gaza will never return to what it once was, a truth we cannot deny. Perhaps what lies ahead will be even harder. Perhaps another war is already forming, but one certainty remains: our connection to this land is stronger than any force that seeks to sever it. Israel does not understand us. Neither does the United States, for there's a fundamental difference between belonging to a land and occupying it. They believe control comes through domination. We know that true belonging is unbreakable. So, yeah. Thoughts before we move on? I only have a little bit left, so, you know,
I mean, it's a hopeful sentiment,
yeah.
but
Yeah, it's also tough to, like, swallow because we know what's capable. So,
yeah.
but yeah, anyway. Um, Zay Squirrel, both Trump and Netanyahu just said Hamas killed and burned babies alive. 0 babies were burned on October 7th. None of the reporters bothered to question them about spreading these deranged hoax and lies. Whitney Webb, a U.S. long-term ownership plan of Gaza is just a nicer way of saying another U.S. long-term military occupation of the Middle East on behalf of Israel. If you think this will bring stability to the Middle East, you learned nothing from the War on Terror era at all. This policy toward Gaza is so extremely neoconservative, it goes even beyond the Bush era. Back then, they at least had to feign occupations were justified by allegedly going after the U.S.'s invisible enemies. So, also, meanwhile, Netanyahu gives Trump gold pager in reference to Mossad op against Hezbollah. Trump calls it a great operation. Yeah. So
A little too on the nose, and also kind of like,
I think there's a reason for this, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of other people make this take. But recently, Trump mentioned that if Iran tried to assassinate him, right, everything's in place for the U.S. military to deal with that problem, right?
right.
Which to me essentially says, kill me, Mossad, kill me, I'll do what you want, kill me, right? That's to me what that is, right? And when they give him this gold pager, I think that's the equivalent of, the black pirate dot on a Bible page, you know?
Hmm.
So this is essentially be careful, you know?
Right.
So, but, last little bit, Trump asks Congress to approve 1 billion arms transfer to Israel. So, you think he's stopping that war? Okay. The Trump administration has asked congressional leaders to approve a new $1 billion weapons transfer to Israel that will be funded by U.S. military aid. The deal includes 4,700 1,000-pound bombs worth more than $700 million and $300
So,
million worth of armored bulldozers. That was the
so
ones
to
we refused
clarify,
to give
these
them.
are the bombs that are illegal
Yes,
that Biden got shit over for wanting to send,
that is correct.
that now Trump is planning to send.
Yes. So, which the Israeli military uses to demolish homes and infrastructure in Gaza. So they're the ones turning it into the demolition zone. The request for the new arms transfer comes as Prime Minister Netanyahu is in Washington and set to meet with President Trump at White House on Tuesday. He's expected to push for U.S. support for Israel to restart its genocidal war instead of fully implementing the ceasefire deal. The Journal report Netanyahu is also expecting Trump to push ahead with a massive $8 billion deal that President Biden notified congressional leaders about in January. The report said some Democrats in Congress put a hold on the massive sale and that the Trump administration is now pushing congressional leaders to unblock it. So we're going to get a $1 billion thing that he's already advising, plus the $8 billion that didn't go through, right? So the $8 billion deal...
But
Yes?
no universal health care,
Nah, fuck
no
that.
for
Nah, fuck
us.
that. No infrastructure, none of that. No storm readiness, no fire readiness, no blizzard readiness, none of that, right? So, $8 billion deal includes munitions for fighter jets and attack helicopters. Real well with their AI
Toys.
attack helicopters, right? They're doing a great job with
Toys.
those. The
Toys for
Trump
computers.
administration, yes, also recently released a hold on a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs for Israel. So, Israel officials suggested that the increased military aid was part of a deal to get Netanyahu to agree to a Gaza ceasefire. Trump's envoy for the
Probably.
Middle East, Witkoff, has said he's pushing for the full implementation of the agreement, but the ceasefire is fragile as Netanyahu doesn't want to implement the second phase, which is what we said, that he doesn't want to do that,
Yeah.
and their plans is not to do that. So, and just in case you wondered how our foreign policy looks, so Trump literally pulling the chair for him.
Would you like me to eat your ass?
Pretty much. The cuckery abounds for sure. So that's it. That's all I got. Same boss, new boss, same as old boss. So fun.
I laugh because
Yeah.
Bad Cookies in the chat said, you guys picked some really uplifting.
Look at what we do, dog. My apologies.
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
It really is. But so
I mean, the Conqueror one was, wasn't uplifting, but it was
better.
better.
I wish we look for stuff like I'd love for good things to happen. It'd be great.
Right.
But until
Right.
then, I'm gonna be real
Right.
with people. So blind optimism only means that the person smiling at you can stab you in the throat. So I wish there was some, but I ain't gonna go looking for it. But anyway, talking about these things is why we're demonetized. So you can scan that QR code, go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, or go in that little description below, and give us a couple $1 dues. But otherwise, hit those buttons that are right underneath the video: the like button, the subscribe button, find that share button, send it to your social media. Otherwise, let us know what you think. How ridiculous is this fucking bullshit, and how disturbing is the universe we live in? But otherwise, thanks for watching.